Hey guys, you're watching the Dota Weekly Show, your source of news, mechanics, and whatever else that's interesting. This week we're going to talk about Dreamhack and SMM, two big tournaments that just went by. For the mechanic, we'll talk about Cleave and how that works with different other mechanics. And lastly, for the interesting happenings of the week, I'm going to talk about what am I going to be doing for Dota 2 in the near future. Without further ado, this is the Dota Weekly Show.
It's a Dota Weekly Show.
Yay!
Hey guys, today's December 8th, 2011. I'm Luminous, your host for the Dota Weekly Show, and let's get on to the news. Okay, now, I skipped a week of Dota Weekly Show, and that's because there was a huge win in LA, and it just knocked down a whole bunch of trees. Power line were down, so I lost power for like 2-3 days. I didn't die. There was some rumor that I'm dead or something like that. I'm alive, as you can see here. So, the last week's Dota Weekly Show, if I made it, it would have been delayed by, 3 or 4 days. So I was like, it's too late. So I'm going to just lump everything in this week's Dota Weekly Show. So we're going to get 2 weeks worth of news. There's some pretty big things that happened in 2 weeks, so let's get into it. Dreamhack has been won by WHB, or WoW Honey Badgers. And they are led by Cinderin, which should be a familiar name. He was the captain that led Monkey Business. And the cool thing was that they weren't even an invited team. They just showed up with their computers at the local qualifier. They qualified through it. They make it all the way to the bracket, and they were able to beat some sponsor team, such as SK. So really nicely done for them. And they're recently picked up by the organization MTW. So really shout out to them because going from zero to hero kind of thing. So really looking forward to more games being played by them, and Dota 2 coverage will be beginning fairly soon. I'll talk about it in a bit. But the biggest tournament and the thing that we are all kind of mesmerized about, I guess, is SMM. SMM traditionally is probably like the year's biggest LAN tournament, and this year's SMM I have some mixed feelings. If you watch SMM, if you follow SMM, if you were there for SMM, I think 99% of us could agree that the tournament was not well ran. And I think that's an understatement. Games were delayed 4 to 5 hours, sometimes even longer. There was so much computer problem. There was so many crashes. There was a picture where 4 players had blue screens simultaneously. Like that's how bad it was. So we had so much remakes. Replays couldn't be saved because there's remakes in between. It was just horrible. But after the first initial days, it got better. And the winner of the tournament is IG, taking number 1, which I was really surprised because I thought, the previous 2 weeks when I talked about Dota Weekly, so I was like, oh, they're breaking up IGs, man. This new team, despite having star players, they need time to mesh. They need time to build that chemistry. But no, they just win the tournament. So what I know, right? So good job to IG winning the tournament. And of course, we'll be casting a lot of games for IGs. Don't worry. Number 2 place was taken by Nirvana China, which I actually hope they would have taken number 1 because King J, the player on Nirvana China, he's like Robert Ory of Dota. Like whichever team he goes to wins championship. Back in 2009 with FTD, won SMM. Back in 2010 with eHome, he won SMM. I was like, okay, three-peat. And then no. So it took number 2, which is it's decent. So Nirvana China taking number 2, Mineski taking number 3, and I gotta say that's a huge surprise. Not many people, in fact, I don't think anyone expect them to make it out of round of 8, round 16, because back in previous years of SMM, I don't think they made it past really far. So SMM beating up some really good teams and getting number 3 in SMM, that's a big accomplishment. So really happy to see Mineski doing so well. Of course, we'll be casting a lot of replays. I think I'm repeating that enough times. So don't worry, the SMM contents will be coming out fairly soon as well. But the thing I want to talk about the most is the controversy that happened between EG and Mistrust. So, back to what I said earlier about the tournament is really not ran professionally. There were so many crashes, so much computer problem. So what happened in the game between EG and Mistrust was EG was completely and utterly and beyond all reasonable doubt, they were dominating. I think they had like a 15-minute radiance, 16-minute radiance on the Syllabir. They had a pipe almost finished at that point. They were up by like 4 towers, something like a ridiculous amount, right? They were up by 4 kills. ridiculous amount of lead where I think all players watching the game, even the mistrust players, I think they would know, hey, if we play this game for 5 more minutes, we would just lose. Like the advantage, you can't come back from this huge disadvantage that mistrust was in. And then mistrust had a crash. I don't know if a drop, I don't know. They had a crash. They had a computer problem. So the SMM organization, the admin says, okay, we're going to replay the match. And I think that's where the first problem came in. I personally don't agree with that decision. I think EG should have been awarded with the win. If you have a 16-minute radiance, if you're done with a pipe, if you're up by 4 kills, if you're up by extraordinary amount of towers, I think even if the enemy drops, you should just be awarded the kill. I think all reasonable people should agree with this. And the admin says, okay, you guys play the rematch. So obviously EG wasn't too happy about it, but admins are admins. What they say is the law in the tournament, so they replayed. And EG got owned. EG got owned by mistrust. So EG, they were pretty mad, and understandably so. They were really mad. So Misery, I think it was the whole EG team. The whole EG team was flaming in the second game. Like they were in chat, they were flaming. Misery literally went up to mistrust and cussed them out. There was some really colorful word that I've heard. And also, I think Misery also cussed out the admins. And that's kind of where I start to have a little bit of problem with that. Because, okay, if you're mad after the win, which should have been awarded to EG, I completely agree with that. That's fine. But I think when the moment that you start cussing out to other players, the moment that you cuss out to admins live, I think that's becoming an issue. Because keep in mind, 2 weeks ago I was asking, is Dota 2 ready for professionalism? Are we ready for all these sponsorship teams? Keeping in mind that EG is a signed team, I suppose they're getting paid a salary. There should be some sense of professionalism that is linked to it. And I think, I don't care how big of an EG fan you are, I think we could all agree that what EG did wasn't too professional. I had a long discussion with B-Balling about this, and we both agreed that what EG did wasn't too professional. I think what we couldn't agree on was whether their action was justified. And I don't know, where do you guys feel on this? Are they justified to cuss out someone else? Or are they not do it no matter how dire the circumstance was geared against them? So what happened after that, EG says, F it, we hate SMM, we're not going to participate in this tournament anymore, we boycott this tournament. And that's, and here's the kicker, right, here's the kicker, I don't know how many hours afterwards, maybe it was the next day, maybe it was 2-3 hours afterwards, Mistrust says, okay EG, you know what, let's just replay the match, because it was unfair to them, let's just replay the match, like the second replay, not the first replay, like let's just replay the match afterwards. And EG says, okay, yeah, let's replay the match. So that's where I got really confused, because EG won in game 1, right? They won, and then there was drop. So they replayed game 2 where they got owned. And then after that, EG says boycott. And then after that, they agreed to a rematch. So I'm like, if you agree to a boycott already, there should be no rematch. You're done for the tournament. And then I agreed to, like, I'm just really confused. Like, especially the way they say, okay, we boycott after we lost the second match. I feel like if you boycott after you won the first match and be like, oh, you know what, we don't think we need them to remake. We want fair and square. We're gonna boycott. I would have been behind them 100%. If you say we're gonna boycott after you lost the match, I feel like EG is being a sore loser. I said it. There you go. I said it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. That's what I believe in. I thought EG was being a sore loser. You could hate me for saying that. And then I also agree, okay, let's rematch afterwards, after they said they will boycott. Like, that's where I get really confused. Like, that's not what boycott means. Now, obviously, I don't have 100% of the information. Like, I wasn't there in SMM. I'm just reading what everyone else is saying. So, for all I know, I'm making this huge rant based on incomplete information. And I'm sorry if that's the case. So, I'm really curious what you guys think. Like, is EG, what they did, was that justified? Do you think that's a professional? Hey, what do you think about EG? I share you guys what I think. So I think I spent a little bit too much time on that segment. So that pretty much concludes the news for the Dota Weekly Show of this week. And of course, there's a lot more you could read on Ghost Gamer. Do check that site out. Of course, you could read on SG Gamer if you could read Chinese fluently. Go check that site out as well. So a lot more stuff to read out there. But yeah, that's it for the news, and let's move on to mechanics.
For this week's mechanic, we'll talk about Cleave. Cleave is basically when a melee unit attacks and it deals damage within a certain AoE, so adding a little bit more range, I suppose, to a melee attack. And there's a couple of type of cleaves in Dota. They are different by the magnitude, or how much you're cleaving, and how big your cleave radius is. So now here are a couple of cleaves by their magnitude and by their radius. Now, the big thing about Cleave is, yes, they do stack. So, for example, if you get 2 Battle Furies, then you're cleaving for 70%. Another case, if you get a Battle Fury, and let's say if you have Max Rogue Knight's Great Cleave, from 0 to 175 radius, you're cleaving for 85%. Pretty ridiculous. But from radius 176 to 225, then you're only cleaving the Battle Fury Cleave because, you know, Great Cleave doesn't reach that far. Keep that in mind when you are, buying cleaving items on cleaving heroes. So a lot of times we see, let's say Admiral buying a Battle Fury, which sounds like a good idea, but only if they are really within the actual radius of the Battle Fury Cleave. So keep in mind that's kind of the case. Now, there's a couple of interesting mechanics dealing with Cleave. The biggest thing is that Cleave is reduced by armor type, but not armor value. What armor type means is like, hero armor, piercing armor, hard normal armor, heavy armor, things like that. In Dota, that doesn't have too big of a deal, so don't worry too much about it. Armor value is ignored by Cleave. So basically what that means is it doesn't matter if the guy that you're attacking have max armor, nor does it matter if the guys that you're cleaving off to have max armor either. Like, those guys in the back, they're going to take cleave damage nonetheless. And that's another reason why minus armor upon the enemy hero doesn't actually increase the cleave damage that you splash off to everyone else in the back. Another thing about Cleave is that when the primary target has evasion, and of course when you miss your attack, you don't actually cleave anything in the back, which makes sense. But if the secondary targets, the guys are getting cleave in the back, they don't actually dodge anything. Even if they have evasion and they try to dodge, your cleave will actually still hit them. So if a windrunner is running away and you're cleaving another target against her, she will still get hit. So that's something to keep in mind. A kind of cool and not really a useful fact about Cleave is that Cleave deals separate sources of damage. So in this example, I showed a Juggernaut with 2 Battle Furies and an Anaya with max refraction. With 2 Battle Furies, you could blow off all the refraction charges in 3 hits. But with 1 Battle Fury, you have to attack 5 times to blow down all the refraction charge. So you can see that with 2 Battle Furies, you're dealing double instances of damage. It doesn't matter too much because there's not many things that you could apply to aside from refraction charges. But it's interesting to know. The final thing about Cleave is that most buff placers don't pass through Cleave. So example, if you have a Frost attack or if you have a Desolate attack, only the primary target that you're attacking will get the negative buff on it. The guys in the back, of course, you won't cleave a Frost onto everyone else. That would be OP. The only buff placer that really gets passed on is Critical Strike. So of course, we all see the big numbers of PA critting with the Battle Fury. The guys in the front and everyone else in the back dies. Crit does increase your cleave damage, so keep that in mind. There's a couple of ways to increase your cleave damage. One is to get crit, like I just said right now. Another way is to get attack speed. Last is to get more damage. And of course, we could also get more Cleave. So if you get another Battle Fury, that will increase your damage overall. So that's pretty much it for the Cleave mechanic. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Alright, that's it for the mechanics. So for the interesting happenings of this week, there's a lot to talk about. Okay, for the Riddle, normally I would give out Riddle right here, but I'm not going to do it for this week because I was just swamped with the final. So no Riddle this week. So instead of 5 Betakeys, I'm giving out 6. You could check your name in the description box to see whether that you won the Betakey. And I'll leave the answer of the previous riddle in the description box as well, if you're curious to know what the previous riddle question is. And let me just preface by saying that my riddle failed. It really was a failed riddle, so keep that in mind as you're reading that. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about for the interesting happening is, remember a couple of DWS back I was saying I want to make some hero-focused hero guides, and then I also said I want to help new players, and I've been thinking a lot of this through this segment of time, and I finally decided what I'm going to do. What I want to do is have beginner players send in their replays and then I'm gonna commentate off that replay. It's gonna be a lot more educational focus, and then also let's say for example someone sends me a Bloodseeker replay. Before actually diving into the replay right in the beginning, I want to do like a 5-minute, 10-minute guide on that hero. You know, this is your skill build, this is why you get the skills, this is what item you get. Like, you know, kind of like a 10-minute breakdown of the hero. I think that would help out the new players a bit. And also I will talk about whatever related mechanic to that hero as well. And here's the email that you're going to be sending to lumissofun@gmail.com. And what I want you to put is, in 3 to 5 sentences, not an essay, in 3 to 5 sentences, what you think you need to work on. Whether it's like, oh, you know what, I'm always falling behind in terms of level, I always don't have enough items, whatever it is, whatever concern you have, whatever you want me to really take a look at, you know, positioning, decision making, whatever it is, just put it down in that 3 to 5 sentence, and then I'll try my best to like dissect that replay and help you out. Now, I know people would do this, and I'm telling you, don't send me a replay where you go 28-0-2 and be like, oh, Lumi, look at me, I need help. Don't use this as a chance to just like, you know, get on air and get views. Like, this is dedicated toward newer players. And if you're going 28-0-2, I think you're okay. I think you're fine. Also, don't send me a replay where you go like 12-4-16, and then your team come by for 2-40 and be like, oh man, I need help. Your teammates had a bad game. I think you're fine. I think you're fine. So, you know, it's actually better. I actually prefer if you send me a game where you lost, to be honest. And because I personally feel that in a defeat, you learn a lot more than from the games that you won. But if you send games that you win as well, that's fine. Like, I don't care. This, again, it's geared towards newer players, and it's supposed to help them to ease in the game, where, you know, if you have, you know, 1 or 2 game Dota experience, you don't really know how the hero works, you don't know what item to get. That's kind of what the player is for. Now, of course, I know a lot of my current viewers are for the pro commentaries, and don't worry, they're still going to be here. SMM coverage is going to start, and of course, once SMM is done, I'm going to look into more Dota 2 pro replay as well, so don't worry, that is going to be there. A lot of Dota 2 tournaments coming out soon. There is a LAN currently ongoing in Kiev. Is I saying that right? Probably not. Join Dota's Defense. I'm going to cover probably a couple games from there if possible. And there's just so many Dota 2 tournament coming up, and there's going to be pro replays. So don't even trip. Don't even worry. It's going to be there. But again, right now I want to dedicate some of my time to help the newer players come into Dota 2 as well, because I think that's how the game grows. You get more new players. So that's it for this week's Dota Weekly show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to what you guys think about the EG thing. Like, I probably sound like a big douche saying what I thought, but that's my honest opinion. I'm really hoping that you guys will share your honest opinion with me as well. So, looking forward to reading those. Hope you guys enjoyed this Dota Weekly show. And as always, this is Luminous, signing off to you guys.